We had great feedback from our plantar fasciitis series, so we decided we were going to extend this to other body parts. We're actually going to start with the shoulder because the shoulder complex is another one of my favorite body parts to treat. The shoulder is complex in the sense that there are multiple parts to it. You don't just have the ball and socket, you also have the shoulder blade and how that moves on the rib cage. The shoulder blade comes up and over and inserts with the collarbone, so that's a junction that you have to worry about. Where the collarbone and the chest bone meet are also an area. On top of that, the neck can contribute as well. So we're going to just review general anatomy in this first video to help you understand why things happen in the shoulder. Understanding the basic anatomy of the shoulder and the shoulder complex can help you guys start to understand why injuries happen. And so we're going to look at some of the bony structures and soft tissue structures today. If we start looking at the shoulder complex, most of the time people will complain of shoulder pain, but it might be more than just one part of the shoulder injured. It might be a multitude of things happening. So if we look at the shoulder blade, this is what the front of your shoulder blade looks like. If I was looking straight on at somebody and we took away their rib cage and everything, this is what we'd see. The shoulder blade itself has a hollow inside, a muscle sits in here. We'll talk about that in a second. The top of the shoulder blade comes up and around and meets up with the collarbone. And then you actually, here's the ball and socket, what we think is a ball and socket. And a lot of people think the socket itself is big and kind of encompasses this whole shoulder, the ball of it, but actually you'll notice it's more like a golf ball sitting on a golf tee, so it's not quite as wide as everyone thinks. If we look at it from the back, again, this would be if I removed all the skin and all the muscles, this is what we would see. You can see the shoulder blade itself. Again, you can see some of these ridges and how bone or muscles will sit snugly in some of those spots. Here's the back of the shoulder blade coming up and around and meeting up with the clavicle or the collarbone in the front. And here's another view of how the golf ball will sit on the golf tee. The final joint that needs to be considered when we're discussing shoulder pain is the shoulder blade and its relationship to the rib cage. The shoulder blade does some amazing movements. It'll rotate up when we're reaching overhead. It'll retract back or pull in when we're bringing our arms behind our back. It can do a lot, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the kinesiology in the next visit or in the next video. But just to consider how this structure, how this bone glides on the rib cage, and how a problem somewhere in one of the muscles that's around here can limit the shoulder blade movement, which then can affect the shoulder itself. Now, to look at some of the soft tissue structures that can cause issues in the shoulder, if we were to remove your skin, this is what you would see. So you can see you have your trapezius muscle, or your traps. You have your upper trap, your middle trap, and your lower trap. You also have your lats back here. So issues in here can cause shoulder problems. We'll talk more about that in one of our future videos. Also, some of these rhomboid and back of the rotator cuff muscles, weakness in one of these can also cause shoulder problems. I think one of the areas of the shoulder that is misunderstood by a lot of people is the rotator cuff group. Now, it's not a cup and it's not a rotary cup. It's the rotator cuff. Its job is to help with stability of the shoulder and keep the ball on the socket. And it's made up of 4 muscles, and they each have a different job. But they're also, one muscle specifically, are prone to injuries. And it's simply because of anatomy. And so if you look at, this would be looking at the front of the shoulder blade, you can see this one muscle comes across. This is called your supraspinatus. Its tendon is right underneath the AC joint, or where the top of the shoulder blade meets the collarbone. And what happens is, because of this limited amount of space that's in there, a lot of times people will develop a bone spur, which ends up acting like a little saw, and that saw will start wearing away at the tendon. And so when that happens, it'll start to fray and can cause pain. Another issue is where the bicep muscle inserts to the front of the shoulder as well. Sometimes pinching in there can cause shoulder pain. So you guys can see the amount of stuff that comes in and out of the shoulder, and so that's why shoulder problems are so prevalent. But hopefully through the next couple videos we'll help you guys understand how you can prevent injuries, how you can self-treat them, and know that we're always here to help give you some information if we can. So shoot us a message if you have any questions. Thanks.